So I think all of you know Pierre Brondeau. He's well known in the industry, and he's the CEO of FMC, and had a long career, Rohm and Haas, Dow, and so forth, which we'll talk a little bit about. Like in the case of Bob Patel, maybe start a little bit about the history. Your personal history is a little different than Bob, right? Right?
I wasn't born in India.
You weren't born in India, and your mother didn't start in Delta.
Although your accent might.
Although, Pierre won the International Palladium Medal Award earlier this year from Société de Chimie Industrielle, and I had the privilege of being the chairman. So in his speech and in that the nice comment that Raj Gupta made before, I learned some additional things about his personal upbringing and the effect it had on his career, including how Raj made you go from France and then take over a position in the middle of nowhere, right?
That is correct.
But maybe can you comment a little bit about your own career, and
sure.
Maybe because there's some really distinctive things about your own career that are very interesting, but also like Bob had an impact on how your career and your management of the companies you've run.
Yeah, I was born in France, obviously. My father was in the army, so moved around for most of my youth in France and the Middle East. Actually, I had to wait until the age of 4-year-old to spend more than 3 years in the same house. I always had moved after 2 years, 3 years. So after went to school in France, and after school decided to choose a company which would commit to send me to the US within 2 years. And that company was Air Liquide, so I joined Air Liquide in engineering. And after 2 years, the company sent me to Chicago, where I met my wife, and I stayed there 3 years. Came back to France with Air Liquide, and actually you talked about Raj Gupta. That's when I met Raj Gupta. We were talking, and he said you should work for Rohm and Haas. I said, well, yeah, but not really. I have a good job. I'm happy where I am. So he said, come to see me in London. At that time, I was in Air Liquide, and Rohm and Haas was one of the biggest customers of Air Liquide. So you never refuse an invitation from your customer. So I went to see Raj to London. We spent the day together. At the end of the day, he said, it's pretty obvious that I don't have a job for you. It's pretty obvious that you don't want to work for Rohm and Haas, but you will have an offer tomorrow morning. And I would advise you to accept it tomorrow afternoon. That's the way Raj Gupta does recruiting. And there was a piece of paper by fax, because that time we didn't have email, by fax on my desk the next day. And he was offering me a job, which was a salary with no job. He said, I don't know what it is, but we'll figure it out when you'll join. And we would like you to start in 2 months. And I went back home at night and I said, well, I'm going to change job and work for Rohm and Haas. And my wife said, to do what? I said, I don't know. And then she said, you have 2 kids. I said, yeah, that's a good company, it should be right. I worked for Rohm and Haas in different jobs. That's when I had the greatest job of my career. I was in charge of research for Rohm and Haas based on the French Riviera. And that was a great job.
The job or the French Riviera?
The French Riviera. My tennis game, my golf game was really great improvement. And one day Gupta called me for a breakfast meeting and said, got a job for you. You're way too happy here, and sent me to Bristol, Pennsylvania to run an acrylic plant. That was not the same story. But I did it. The next job which shaped my way of looking at business was Rohm and Haas. At that time, we were an acrylic company, very much from monomers to polymers, but an acrylic chain company. And the company was looking at a growth platform. And the view was small volume, high price, high margin, highly technological product. And we thought about getting into electronic materials. And that's when I was sent by Rohm and Haas to Boston to build an electronic materials business for Rohm and Haas. At that time, the CEO was Larry Wilson. He told me, it was 95, he said, by 2000, we need $1 billion business in electronic materials. And I say, why $1 billion? He said, because $1 billion sounds good. And I say, no, nothing more. I say, not really. We don't know the market. We don't know anything about this business. But the thing is, Rohm and Haas at that time was a $4 or $5 billion company. If you really want to make a platform, which makes sense, you have to build a significant size business. And that's when I learned about acquisition. We did an incredible number of acquisitions, blending that with organic growth through technology, investing a lot in technology, moving toward Asia, growing with the semiconductor industry. It was a great experience. Actually, it's maybe the thing I'm the most proud of in my career. When Raj talked about that at Palladium Metal, when Rohm and Haas was sold to Dow Chemical, the valuation was $16 billion. Half of it was the electronic material platform, which was a very fast-growing and profitable business. We got acquired by Dow, and at that time I stayed a few months with Dow Chemical and decided to join FMC. And that's what I did for the last 10 years.
So, one of the, a lot of comment has been about structural change and transformation. Right? And I think that certainly is a very good description of what you've gone through as CEO of FMC. Maybe you tell us about what caused you to take that job, right? What was it that you saw in it? But then if you could talk about what has transformed and how you came to decision to make the changes which you've done successfully as a result.
Sure. Yeah. Well, coming from Rohm and Haas, I wanted to run a company which had maybe part of the portfolio in specialty because that's what I knew best, and that's what I knew how to grow. Now, quickly when I joined FMC, I realized it was a difficult company to run. Think about a company. We were in silicate, zeolite, phosphate, peroxygen, soda ash, nutrition, pharmaceutical, and agricultural. Try to give a valuation to that. It was impossible. You could have a business which had multiple of 5 times EBITDA to business which had multiple 10 to 15 times. My first earnings call, I always remember that. I was so well prepared to talk about the health and nutrition and the agricultural strategy to grow that. I could not say a single word about any of those businesses because everybody wanted to talk about soda ash pricing in China because that would impact the quarter results. So you could never take your investors toward your growth platform because we had commodities with so much swing on the pricing that company was. We also had issues to recruit people because we couldn't describe who we were. So we were hiring people who were specialized. So we spent after 5-6 months together, a few of us got together and said, what do we want to be? And we looked at the portfolio and we had 10 business units and we said we're really good when there is customer interaction, when there is technology, when there is application. We are not very good at heavy manufacturing and processes. So we decided we're going to be an agricultural health and nutrition company. That was the idea. And then we said we have this lithium business. At some point, it should be something. People talk about the electric vehicle at that time. It was small at that time, but we knew they were something. We were not ready to invest in it, but we knew we would do something with this one toward the end of the transformation cycle. So we started transformation. We shut down a bunch of businesses which we could not sell, could not turn to profitability. Then we sold peroxygens. Then we sold the soda ash business. And then we made a move which was not very popular with the investment community. We bought Kevinova. It was a generic agricultural company. The prime we had, FMC, was an America's ag company. So whatever would happen in Brazil and North America would be what would happen to FMC. We all know ag companies depend upon weather. The weather is rarely bad all over the world, but the weather could be bad in North America. Then half of your business would be impaired. So we bought Cheminova, which was mostly an Asia-European company. Didn't explain that very well. People thought, oh, you're moving into being a generic, low multiple, you're going down in technology level. So, and then Brazil came, devaluation of the currency, 40% of FMC was in Brazil. The stock price went from $75 to $30 in about 6 months. I was not a very popular CEO. I had a great vision, but I was the only one to think I had a great vision. It looks like the rest of the world was not in agreement with it, but we stayed with it. And by 2016, we really thought we had the foundation for a company. We had a global ag, health and nutrition company, and we had the lithium business, which was ready to be spun off as a public company. So we really thought, that's it. Now we're going to create that. We're going to build that. The world changed on us. The nutrition company, nutrition world became different. Organic food, clean label. So you had to be very broad. If a company, one of your customers, you want to use carrageenan, they will tell you, we don't want carrageenan. We are carrageenan free. Why do you have to replace it? Well, we had carrageenan. We are very deep, very narrow. Ag, the world was changing. Dow and DuPont were getting together. Syngenta was acquired by Chem China. Bayer was buying Monsanto. I'm not sure it was a good move, but they did it. And BASF was also trying to grow into the seed business. So we realized that we'd be facing formidable competitors, and us, we would be kind of a hybrid company in the middle. So all of a sudden we stepped back and we said, wow, the vision we had, it's just not good anymore. We're going to fail in ag because the four other companies are going to be way too good, and we're going to fail in health and nutrition because we're not broad enough. So we had to decide where to go. So we said we're going to go into ag. We're going to sell health and nutrition. It's a big multiple. It's going to give us a lot of cash. And because the other companies are merging, we're going to have opportunity to acquire product because of antitrust. And then at that point, I called every single CEO, Bayer, BASF, Dow, DuPont, and Syngenta to say, whatever you divest, you're going to call me. I will have the cash. And so that was a change. The world forced us to change, and the decision was we're going to be a pure ag company, we're going to be a technology ag company, and we're going to spin off as a public company the lithium business. And I was waiting for CEOs to get back to me, and all of them got back to me to try to sell me not the most attractive part of their portfolio. But I got my Christmas gift in 2017, December, when I got a call from Ed Breen saying, Pierre, I'm stuck. We can't do the merger between Dow and DuPont. You've got to buy my ag business. He said, it's going to be very expensive, but it's a good business. I said, it's not going to be very expensive because you told me you have to sell your ag business. And you're calling me, there's going to be a reason for it. And the reason was the European Commission has decided we need 5 companies in the technical ag industry. If you need 5, it means Bayer, BASF, Syngenta couldn't buy that business with their chemical. They were excluded. So then we're in competition against generic, which didn't have the money, and we're the currency. But then the good thing is, I have lunch with Ed to talk about discuss the acquisition, and all of a sudden we realized that DuPont was building a big platform in health and nutrition. And that's when we said, how about we do a swap? You take my health and nutrition, I take your ag business, we'll compensate with a little bit of cash, and we do the transaction. And that's what we did. And actually by November 1st, 2017, FMC became one of the 5th one of the 5 largest ag chemical company in the world, and we spun off the lithium business into a publicly traded company. So, and that's the company we have today.
By the way, that swap worked really well for you, but I've done a number, but they're very hard to do because it's very hard to get both sides. Each one has something that the other one wants, but within a certain size, so that in valuation. But you pulled it off because that was, it was a benefit to both sides.
I think when you have a deal like that, the beauty of that deal, it's maybe one of the best deals I had to do, is Ed Brin had to do a transaction to allow $150 billion merger to happen. Whatever plus or minus 2 or 3 or 4 or $500 million, when it allows $150 billion deal, makes the negotiation a little bit easier. Even with Ed. His top priority was not, and any other timetable, his top priority was not to optimize the value of the business, was to make it in a way where none of us will have eggs on our face and will look all right in the transaction, but the transaction had to happen. So it was a deal very beneficial for Dow and DuPont, and extremely good for FMC.
Yeah, but it is rare for those things to be able to happen.
It is.
And I did one where, again, the seller had to sell for antitrust reason, and the logical buyers would be these Japanese, who would screw up the market because with the remaining business. So I went to my client and said, "Do you have something that the seller really would like to have? And then we'll just do a deal." And we did the swap. And then the other benefit, of course, is you have a leeway as far as what the valuation should be. So you can save a lot of taxes if you do it as well. But they're very hard to do.
They're hard to do, and one of the key issues was ag multiple those days were in the EBITDA multiple 12, 13, 14. Mm-hmm. You would look at health insurance transactions, because there were very few of them, 17, 18, 19, 20 times.
Right.
It is not this kind of difference when you do a swap.
Right.
It's not very easy. It's a problem.
Did you, in the end, how did the shareholders in the market end up feeling about this transition from multiple products, some commodities, some specialty, different types, and then, moving yourself gradually to being kind of a pure play?
I think it was very, the market reacted at the end very well. We had these little bits of a problem in the way, what I told you, when the stock just took a dive, and it was a difficult time for the company, but with the evolution of the strategy, if you think about it in a 10-year period, FMC with its 10 businesses versus FMC today as a pure play, the market, the enterprise valuation today is 5 times what FMC used to be. The EBITDA of the company is only multiplied by 2 versus what it used to be. So you have a multiple expansion on the company. Sales are bigger, but the sales are not even twice as big as what they used to be. So it's really a translation into market valuation. The stock of the company when I joined was in the $20, and we just crossed. We almost reached 100 yesterday, all-time high at 99. But think about, it's not 99. It's not on the same basis, because we also have given to our shareholders the lithium business as a dividend, which is also truly a publicly traded company. So it's way north of $100.
And obviously lithium, although for a long time it was everyone considered very sexy, growth forever, so forth, obviously is run into bumps in the road. Although I don't know whether you knew that when you spun it off, or whether it was just fortunate that it's separate now.
So I don't think anybody was expecting the lithium business to go where it went today. But I think the same way the valuation of the company and the multiple, today we are trading at a 13 times next year EBITDA. The expansion in multiple was due to the fact that we're a pure play company. If you think about the lithium business, very capital intensive. Ag business, it's technology, it's low capital. You don't want to load your balance sheet. You need that to do business in Latin America, where terms and working capital are very high. Those businesses didn't fit with each other. So then it's not the same type of investors. People who buy lithium minerals businesses don't buy ag, which depends on weather. Not at all the same type of investors. And people were very, and then you have the lithium business which go up and down in an enormous way. And people say, I don't want to buy a company which 80% of the EBITDA is ag, but the stock goes up by 10% because of lithium. So we were almost forced to separate the business, to create the true valuation. And actually it worked. If you look, the lithium business going down was more than compensated by the ag business going up and the multiple.
Yeah, Pierre, it's very interesting because, before when I was talking, Bob and I were talking about how management styles, people have certain degrees of freedom in their management style, right? You can't take a startup person and have them run a mature business, for example, usually. But the other is how your career takes you through certain jobs where you learn certain skills and certain ways of living. What I find interesting is that if I look at your career, the nature of the businesses that you were running and the senior management skills required actually varied quite a bit, right? Because very different growing electronic materials business, Rohm and Haas, versus what you were doing at Dow versus so forth. So maybe you can help understand sort of how you personally progressed, because you've been successful at all those, and yet in one sense it's interesting because they were very different type of jobs in different types of situations, right? So clearly you weren't applying just, I'll just take what I learned from growing electronic materials, I'll just apply it to FMC and so forth, right? Because you clearly changed your view and changed the way you went about it. Any comment about that? Because a lot of this is strategy, but a lot of it is just how you manage things, right? And what skills you have to have.
Yeah, and I think if I look back at my career and where I've succeeded versus where I have not succeeded, I'm much more comfortable in a change environment than I am in a steady state. Mm-hmm. Bob talked about, for example, what Jim did. I'm not sure I'm the type of guy who could have done what Jim did with Lionel Basel. By the way, you said you knew Jim and you still joined Lionel Basel. I mean, really? So I think if you look back at the places where I've been successful, most of the time it was growth businesses and portfolio change. Where I might have not been as successful as you give me, talk about business I had to run at Rohm and Haas, the big monomers business, and optimize manufacturing, optimize processes, sweat the assets, maybe less of a skill for me. So yeah, it was a big range of businesses in different situations, but there is a theme for me. If you look at FMC, the business I sold or let go, the business which were the most manufacturing intensive and maybe less fast growth businesses.
Well, it certainly says two things. One is if you're running a company, it's really important to know yourself and to also make sure that you're well matched. Your natural skills and your natural abilities are well matched with the situation, because I've seen some very successful CEOs then transplanted to a different situation and they just fall on their face, right? I mean, how many very successful GE or Honeywell managers then were placed into running other companies, and either some succeeded and some were big failures. So a lot of it is that, and that puts a burden on the board of directors to choose wisely, right? That in terms of the fit between the CEO with that company. Right?
And it was a discussion I had with the board of FMC when I joined. They asked me what division of the company. And I told them most likely if I would come, the company would look very differently 10 years down the road than it would look when I joined. If their intent was to be more on a steady state with a very diversified conglomerate, I would not be the right CEO of the company.
Yeah, no, that's right. Well, it's very interesting, but it really is important. And I think in my own case, I became, even though I was very successful at Solomon, Lehman Schroeder, when I looked at what I was unhappy about, I realized it wasn't, if I just moved to Morgan Stanley, it would solve the problem, right? It was that I wasn't going to be happy in an increasingly larger, financial institution. That I was much more interested in running businesses, first of all, which, by the way, investment banking, people really don't run the business. If you're head of an industry group, you run sales and a little bit of manufacturing, and that's it, right? And so there was a recognition that I'd be better off if I ran a kind of firm that was built around the way I really enjoyed, and I had run business before, so there was no mystery about whether I could do human resources and everything else. But a lot of it is knowing yourself and saying, do you fit with a particular situation? Does that drive a lot on like the people that you've recruited and so forth?
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. And I think if you look back, well, half of the management team at FMC came from Rohm and Haas, because it was a specialty chemical company. That's what we are trying to create. Those were people who were also more comfortable in high growth, portfolio changing environment, and those are the people we brought into the company.
Yeah. Well, that's why I really worry about, whenever we've had clients who are, say, commodity chemicals, and they say, we want to get into specialty chemicals. We basically say, it's not that you don't have the money to do it. The issue is, do you have the mentality to run a specialty business well? And the answer 80% of the time is no. It's not an IQ issue, it's a mentality issue. Because you can't run a specialty because it's the way you run a commodity chemical business.
Now the big trap is, if you look at the management team we have, you still need to have 2, 3, or 4 people. You still have to run your plants.
Right.
You still need to have processes. You still need to have yield. So you got to make, and when it's not your number one strength, you better have 2 or 3 people who are looking at that and creating those efficiencies you need in the company.
So, crystal ball, looking ahead, both for you personally, but also FMC, what do you think the challenge is, and what's going to be the priority over the next 5 years?
Well, first I think, we had a discussion at the table. If you look at the ag industry today, we are a target. We're a target of NGOs. We are a target of people around the environment. It's becoming more and more difficult, especially in Europe, bringing new products. So I think we're going to have to. FMC today, we've lived through 10 years of transformation. We need to. The focus for me is take this company for the next 2 years and learn to be a company which is growing in a stable portfolio environment, which means developing technology. We have a big technology portfolio. We have 23 new platforms. Cost about $250 million in 10 years to bring a new ag molecule to the market. We have 23 of them in the pipeline right now. So we got to do all of that in a very sustainable way. We need to take into account all of the regulatory changes. So if I look FMC today, we're growing. The last 8 quarters been growing revenues 10-12% year on year. So we have a portfolio to grow in this kind of a range, but it's going to require us to be very strong at developing the technology and the portfolio. We're going to have to penetrate into a new market. The ag industry is going to change. Big data is going to be smart ag, precision ag. The world is changing. People are trying to put less and less product on the ground.
Yeah.
So you got to be super smart about it and how to do it. People have to anticipate more what's going to be happening to the crops. So that's a big thing. Is for the first time maybe in my career, I'm not thinking 5 years down the road. I'm thinking 2 years right now. We are at a time when the company is going to start to establish what we'll do for the future. We need a pause for 2 years, and we need to sell a company within the existing market on how to grow organically. And then we'll see where we go from here.
It is very interesting because first of all, there are some connections with some of the things that Bob said about the public perception issue, right? That the commodity and plastic industry going through, and the ag business has the same issue. And actually, we do life sciences, so the drug companies have the same problem, right? Which is a huge part of what's affecting the business is public perception. And if you get on the wrong end of the public perception, it can be a real challenge, but you can't just let it happen, right? The other part that that's part of your business, that's not like, similar for plastic, but similar to drug companies, is you have products that have to go through a very significant long R&D and regulatory testing thing, which is not true of, of most chemicals. So in a sense, you've got both of the pharmaceutical industry issues, and you've got partly something that's both pharmaceutical and so. So on that end, what's the ag industry trying to do as a group or individually on this public perception side? Because it could be deadly, right? If it goes the wrong way, right?
Yeah. Well, we do what any industry is doing. I mean, right now, if you look at all of us, all of the product we are bringing to the market, softer and softer chemistry, we advertise it, we talk about it. I can tell you there is not a single, I'm talking about 23 platforms we have, there is not a single platform today in our portfolio. But it would be the same for Bayer, for BSF, for Syngenta. All of them are much softer chemistries from a sustainable development standpoint. It has become a way of life. Mm-hmm. We don't even have a choice because we will not get the regulatory approval for this product. The toxical, it's the most regulated industry there is in the world today. Mm-hmm. And you would not get the regulatory approval if you would not have that. So the problem is, from a PR standpoint today, we are overwhelmed by what is happening on the legal. Bayer is the main target with glyphosate, and the noise is so big that PR activity are almost disappearing under the noise, which is brought by all of the litigation. So it's a big challenge we have as an industry today.
Yeah, that's right. Is there some, but I guess it has a spillover effect, right, for everyone, right?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. There is two things to look at. This. First of all, we are in the same boat. Second of all, let's face it, it's forcing the industry to do the right thing. Right. I don't like to have to spend $250 or $300 million to bring a new product to the market, and knowing that more than half of the spending is due to the toxicology, not to the development of the technology. That being said, that's all of us. That's our health for the future. That's our environment. So it is the right thing to do, and that's why the industry is learning how to do today and doing better. The biggest issue is that science in a field, like in many cases, does not always win. Bayer is facing that today with glyphosate. Science doesn't always win, and it's an uphill battle. We're trying to learn how to from a communication standpoint.
Well, the good news is you got to feed people, and ag is so critical towards improving the efficiency of farms, and that so that's on the positive side will create the pressure, so that because there are limits to what they can do to try to impede you, because they ultimately governments have to make sure people are fed. Right? And by the way, I spent 7 or 8 years at Bain & Company, and Monsanto was a client the whole time. I had different clients, so forth, but I did a lot of work on Roundup and Lasso and so forth. So, and you know, lysine, methionine for pigs and so forth, riding around the French countryside with little piglets, learning about how they fed them. So it was a fun part of my career. But I have one analogy to where, you know, where Raj called you and said, I want you to join and so forth. I know this is not what you want to do. I had the same experience with Bill Bain, because I came to Harvard Business School. I was going into investment banking. I had offers from Goldman and Morgan and so forth. Bill Bain had just started Bain & Company, you know. He called me and he said, you've never heard of me? And I said, that's right. You have no interest in strategy consulting? That's right. He said, and you have, so I said, thus far you're doing quite well. I'm in agree with you. But he persuaded me to join Bain & Company. He said, you'll be a better investment banker. He was very good, by the way, at selling. He said, work me for 2 years, you'll be a better investment banker. I ended up there 7 or 8 years, and in fact I owe not, because my whole career in life science and chemicals I owe to him by accident, right? So thank you very much. This was a wonderful conversation. I think we learned a lot about FMC, but probably more importantly, we learned about the way you think and the strategy and some of the things that you've done, which I think have been key to the success of the companies that you've run.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.